Hey there, good morning. It's Mark and I'm here in Redwood City in front of the San Mateo County History Museum. Seems like this is my weekly stop here to do the reading. I teach a class down here, and so it just kind of seems like a nice practice for me to teach the class and then to do this reading. I do wish sometimes my schedule had some consistency, and it's pretty funny because when I have a schedule with consistency, then I want a schedule without consistency. So sort of learning how that all balances out and sort of the cosmic humor, about how we wish for certain things. So I'm here to do the reading from the Golden Present Daily Inspirational Readings by Swami Satchidananda. Today is April 12th, and I think this is the longest reading so far. It's 2 pages. So hang in there. The topic is, it's all for good. And it's in a story, like a story that'll teach this lesson. It's all for good. Once upon a time there was a king who had a wonderful, wise minister. The minister was very loyal and devoted to the king, and the king never left the palace without the minister at his side. One day, as the monarch was cutting a piece of fruit, he accidentally cut his finger. As it was being treated, he asked the minister why this happened. "I was very careful," he explained, "but the knife just seemed to slip all by itself." The minister looked at him and gently said, "Don't worry, Raja, it's all for good." The king became furious. "What kind of philosophy is this? I have cut my finger, the blood is pouring, yet you stand there calmly and say it's all for good? If that is as much as you care about me, I don't want you around anymore." He called the guards and told them to take the minister to jail. The minister quietly submitted. As he was being taken away, he simply said, "Fine, this is all for good." Several days later, the king decided to go hunting. He went far into the forest with a large group of companions. Suddenly, he started chasing a beautiful deer. Of course, he had the fastest horse, and he soon left the others far behind. Still, the deer managed to escape. When the king realized how far he had gone, it was too late. He was very deep into the jungle and was lost. Fortunately, the Raja had been on many adventures, and he stayed calm. He was very tired and thirsty. Nearby there was a big green tree with a small brook running past it. He drank his fill, then leaned against the tree and fell asleep. In a little while, a rustling sound woke the king. He slowly opened his eyes. What he saw made him freeze. A huge lion was standing right next to him, sniffing him all over. He didn't know what to do, so he just stayed still and watched the lion. All of a sudden, as the lion was sniffing one of the king's hands, it snorted and ran away. The king was amazed at his good fortune. He leaped up and began shouting for his companions, who eventually found him. "Listen," he told them, "a lion came while I was sleeping. He was huge and ferocious looking. He was all ready to eat me, but something mysterious happened. All of a sudden, the lion just left." "That's wonderful," they exclaimed, but none of them could explain what had happened. When they returned to the palace, the king had the minister brought from the jail. He told the story in every detail. The minister simply said, "It's all for good, Maharaja." "What do you mean, all for good? That doesn't explain why the lion just went away without even biting me. What is the explanation?" "Maharaja, the lion is the king of the beasts, just as you are the king of the people. When somebody offers you a fruit, it should be a clean, wholesome fruit. The minute the lion smelled the cut finger, it knew that you were not whole, not fit. As the king of beasts, it didn't want to eat you. So you see, Raja, the cut finger saved your life. Now do you understand that it's all for good? As for my imprisonment, you know that ordinarily we are never separated. Surely I would have been with you on the hunt and would have raced after you through the jungle. We would have both been sleeping under the tree when the lion arrived. He would still have rejected you, but he would have swallowed me. Because you had put me in jail, my life was saved. It is not often easy to see the good in adversity when it occurs. When you find yourself in pain, remember the story of the king and his minister. The benefit may not make itself clear until much later, but it is there. Have faith in the positive outcome. Tell yourself it's all for good. It's like a mantra in a way. You can repeat it again and again to give you courage. Oh boy. Here we go. We certainly can use this on a regular basis, I feel like, in our lives, because I feel like there is often a lot of times that we do see adversity in the world, and I will say I'm particularly more aware of that this year than I feel like in maybe many other years that I can think of in my lifetime. Certainly in history, I can see where there's been a lot of adversity and a lot of uncertainty, but I feel like in my lifetime, this maybe is a little more significant. And I think that it could be thought, oh no, everything's, just falling apart or going to hell in a handbasket, and we're doomed. But is it possible? Is it possible that it is all for good? I know that this will be challenging when I think about certain things in the news, and I think about some things that we just think are atrocities and crimes against humanity, or things that are instigating fear, instigating anger, instigating mistreatment. How can that be all for good? And I think, like in this story, all the pieces weren't there for the king to be able to comprehend why one thing would lead to the next. And as Swami Satchidananda says, sometimes it may take some time before we see that it lands in that. But in the accumulation of time, is it possible things will end up finding the right place? And I like to think about this idea too about somewhat of a cliche phrase, but I think there's power in it, that the good will prevail. And that oftentimes I feel like we've seen in our lifetime that when something isn't right, when something is either morally unjust, socially unjust, politically imbalanced, that the pendulum swings. The extra challenge is that, and I've shared this before because I've heard this before, that life is like this pendulum. But we want it, once it swings back to the good side, I think there's a tendency that we think, well, that's where it should stay. That's where it's good for everybody, right? But it swings again. Sometimes when it's for the good of all of us, actually someone else somewhere else may be suffering. I think about an example of when we feel like we may be, enjoying, buying some lavish gifts or enjoying some travel. It's at the expense of who? Like, who was it that actually might have had to suffer to be able to create this benefit for us? So sometimes it's hard to put that all together, to piece that together, that there is a lot of harm happening in the world, a lot of that we are unaware of or take for granted or assume has been fixed. But can even all that be all for good? I suppose if it helps wake us up, if more and more of us are able to be aware that things like this are happening, there is social injustice, there is great cruelty and suffering in the world, that the more of us are able to start to waken up to see that, what is the cause to that, and is there something we can do about that? And that is part of the Buddhist path, And I shared this before, that life is suffering, but there is a cause to the suffering. There is a way to move out of the suffering, and then in Buddhism it offers, this eightfold path And in yoga, there's actually something similar with the Ashtanga yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga. And it's to help awaken us to find our right duty, our right livelihood, our right purpose, in the world. Is it just to completely satisfy our own cravings and our own needs, or is it to be of service to others in as great of a way that we possibly can make that happen? So last thing I think about is doing these readings and building my business, and how there's been a little bit of feeling like lack of faith, complete faith, because I feel some challenges. But can it be that those are all leading me towards this place that's all for good, rather than thinking, oh, and here's a negative, here's another negative, and another negative, and another negative, I could keep going down that path, but possibly these are all to ultimately amount to some good. The pendulum will swing, and to start getting more physically fit for this experience of navigating through not just life, but building a business and doing something different, shifting my relationship with life path, with money, with relationships, etc. So can we say that it's all for good? Maybe not every moment, but sometimes we need to hear that from another person, right? That can, like the minister in this story that's shared that with the king, and it's only later that we can come around. So that's where I'll share for today. Feeling some of this beautiful sun, that feels like that's all for good. I'm appreciating it, and getting to do this reading early, and hopefully posting this with ease. So if not, however it works out, it's all for good. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right.